Growing up, it was hard just because I was the only person of color in my music and dance school. I'd like to say I'm a reformed perfectionist when it comes to playing music, but I was very hard on myself. I think knowing that I wasn't Irish and stood out so starkly compared to everybody else in my school, that I needed to really kind of push. So because I wanted to show that I was a good musician, I really, really practiced.
Hi everyone, this is Lulu, founder of Kaylee.io. Today we're speaking to Zohra Coday, Concertina teacher. Zohra was actually my teacher at the group class at the Irish Arts Center in New York City. Thanks so much for joining me, Zohra.
Thank you for having me.
So this is actually a great opportunity for me to learn a little bit more about you. How did you get into Irish music?
So when I was in preschool, I was about 4 or 5, and for St. Patrick's Day, every year we would have the local music and dance school come and perform, and a lot of the preschool alumni, like the little kids, were in the Irish music and dance school, and so they would come back. So you would kind of see like the past students doing this art form. Once I saw the performance, I was like, that's what I want to do. But every single year in the summer, my mom would take me to India because that's where she was from. So finally, I think when I was 8, we didn't go to India, so that's when I was able to finally start.
So you started with dancing, is that right?
Dancing and music. So we were required to do and whistle for about 2 years and dance at the same time. And then we could kind of move on to a different instrument. So I started on fiddle and then moved to concertina when I was probably 12, actually.
Wow. So you're actually multi-talented with all the different instruments that you play. How are you on the whistle and the fiddle?
Fiddle I don't play anymore. Whistle, um, I'm adequate. I wouldn't say I'm way better at concertina than I am any other instrument. But I can
Uh,
like kind of dabble in different things. So
and so that was in Missouri, right? In St. Louis.
in St. Louis, yep.
Was it difficult to find a teacher to teach you concertina?
No, actually, it's kind of surprising. You would think with where St. Louis is situated in the middle of the country, and it's not like Chicago, it's not New York, that it would be hard. But like my teacher played the accordion as well, so she taught accordion and concertina, and we had flute, we had banjo, baron, harp. So we had actually like quite for where we were, there were a lot of teachers, and that was the I guess slightly older generation of like past students that were then teaching again. So for what it was worth, like there was a lot of options for how small it was, and we were actually the only school that had music and dancing. There were other dance schools, but we were the only Irish music school in St. Louis.
I see. So it was a school and it was not associated with the Cultus branch
It
or
was a
what's
Coltis branch. Yep.
okay.
So I
That's
think it
great.
was actually the only Coltis branch in St. Louis.
What drew you to the concertina? Out of all the instruments that were there.
Yeah, it's actually kind of funny. I was playing the fiddle and I had scoliosis at that time, so I had to switch instruments because the fiddle wasn't helping my posture. And so I literally picked every single other instrument, right? I was like, oh, what about the accordion? They were like, it's too heavy. Flute also messed up my posture. Harp, my mom wasn't going to carry that for me. So, I know, horrible, right? But now I'm like, actually, she was onto something because harps are, I feel like they're just very cumbersome and like, having to move.
Right.
Um, but yeah, so they were like, you need a small instrument, and you could either play the banjo because it's kind of very similar to the fiddle, but it's more upright. So either banjo or concertina. And I was like, I don't even know what the concertina is. So I had a 30-minute lesson, 15 with the banjo and 15 with the concertina, both teachers side by side. And the banjo teacher also taught the fiddle, so I think I'd had a couple classes with him, but ended up just like doing 15 minutes of each, and somehow something with the concertina like stuck, so that's how I picked that one. So
That's really interesting to hear that concertina came to you rather than you specifically pick concertina.
yeah.
And sometimes when we have illnesses, that actually creates new opportunities for us. Because I was speaking to Steve Jones earlier he used to play the fiddle, but then he got vocal dystonia and then had to switch over to the accordion.
Okay.
And now he teaches accordion. And I myself, I think I've told you the story before. I got in a car accident when I was biking in Dingle, and that's how I came upon the concertina. And so
Yeah.
it's interesting to hear all of our stories.
Hmm.
So then you were taking lessons with your teacher in St. Louis for a while. What was your
Yeah.
teacher's name?
So my teacher was Kelly Winter. So she played accordion and concertina. So I had private lessons with her, and then because we were like the coldest branch and we competed, we had like duets, trios, groupuscules, and Kaylee bands. So we did the whole 9 yards. But yeah.
Right. And then later on, you had the opportunity to go train in Ireland. Is that right?
Yes, so I finished high school, and once I was out of high school, Kelly was like, "I've taught you all I can teach you. Like, you don't need me anymore." And I was like, "No, Kelly, I do need you." But I do think, like, for what it's worth, I like hindsight, right? It's 2020. I do see where she was coming from, but at that point, it was kind of hard, right? Because I was transitioning into college, and I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I was like, I loved the music so much. And that's when I kind of started teaching because I still want to be involved. And my junior year of college is when I heard about the University of Limerick and University College Cork. And that's when I started hearing about the music programs there. So I decided, I think it took me about a year and a half maybe after college to kind of work up and get ready to go to Ireland. But that was probably the best decision musically I could have made just because, and it got cut short because of COVID, so that was really disappointing. But I think just the people I met there, having Tommy Fitzharris, who was my concertina teacher there, he was so helpful because I struggled with confidence a lot with my playing. So he was kind of like a therapist in that way, but he really helped me hone in and just explore the music. So I loved UL. I would suggest it to anybody who wanted to go. So.
That's good advertisement for University of Limerick's program.
Yeah.
But you had said that it was cut short because of COVID. Did you come back here or were you in Ireland for some time?
No, I came back. I did not want to come back. I literally stayed until like 3 days before everything shut down. I was really trying to like stay there.
Oh.
But yeah, so I ended up doing the second half of the program from St. Louis. So it
Mhm.
was hard, honestly, because we had like ensemble class and we had a couple others that would have benefited from being in person. And like first semester obviously was in person. But it was still manageable. I just did my final performance via video. So,
Aw,
but it was still fun. Like I still got my private lessons, got my master classes. So, yep.
that's great. But I think
Yeah.
when you were there, you had the opportunity to learn from a number of the great players from there, right? I think Patrick Wren, you know. Who else were you able to learn or take lessons from?
Yeah, so I learned from, if I can remember them all, Now Vallely, whose brother is Killian Vallely in Lunasa, and then Hugh Healy, who I think is from Claire Ernestine Healy. I don't know if they're of any relation, but Killian King, and then who else? Oh, Cormac Begley, I learned from. Podrick you mentioned. So yeah, quite a few people. And at that point, I think coming from the U.S. And not knowing the backgrounds of a lot of these musicians, it was really interesting, right? Because I think Cormac wasn't as, I'd say, I mean, he's coming from a very well-known musical family anyway, but he didn't have the same notoriety as he does now. So it was very interesting kind of seeing where he is now, but also having met him, 7 years ago, and kind of just hearing his thoughts and his hopes at that point and then seeing them come to fruition. So it's really nice. I really liked just meeting everybody and just kind of taking them for that moment in time, because I didn't have any kind of previous ideas or knowledge about them. So it was nice.
Right. I feel very jealous because you had such great opportunities to learn from all of them. And obviously, you look different from a lot of these concertina players who are Irish. You said your mom is from India and your dad is African American. Is that right?
Yep.
So, what is that like? Do you feel that maybe you stand out more because you're not Irish, that people remember you?
I think I have a different perspective on it now. I think growing up it was hard just because I was the only person of color in my music and dance school up until probably high school. So it was hard because I felt like, and I'd like to say I'm a reformed perfectionist when it comes to playing music, but I was very hard on myself. And that's something like that's why UL was like the best but also hardest year of my life, because that's what I had to really focus on, is not trying to be perfect, just like play and enjoy the music, and kind of have the music kind of come through your playing. So growing up, I was very hard on myself, and I think knowing that I wasn't Irish and stood out like, I guess, so starkly compared to everybody else in my school, that I needed to really kind of push, because I knew that because I already stood out, people were going to see my playing and kind of hone in on me. So because I wanted to show that I was a good musician, I really, really practiced. And, that's what I tell my students a lot of the time is, just even practicing like 20 minutes a day or just listening to the recordings helps a whole lot. So that's what I did. And that's how I think I've gotten to that level. Because I think, to the previous point about, illnesses and moving to different instruments, if I was still on the fiddle, I would not even be where I am today. I think something clicked with the concertina, and also I think how hard I worked for it to prove myself also kind of aided to that. So sometimes I can be competitive with like games, but competition and music I was very competitive with for myself. But I'd say nowadays it's not as much like me being hard on myself or having to prove myself. I think in a way everybody, has to prove themselves as they go. But I think now it's more curiosity when people kind of see I'm in the sphere. A lot of them ask like, "Oh, what's your background? How did you get into music?" And then once they hear me play, they're like, "Oh, okay." But
That's great to hear. And what you said earlier reminded me a bit of immigrants' mentality also, that come here, you have to work, you have to be twice as good as other people to be taken seriously. And so I think the hard work that you put in definitely paid off.
yeah, thanks.
So maybe we transition a little bit into your teaching. What are some common issues that you see with the students that you've had?
I think one of them is confidence. I don't think it's because like I struggled with it so much. I think I'm able to relate in a way and try to like, navigate the lesson or the discussion around what we're doing because I've experienced it. But I'd say that's the difference between kids and adults when you're teaching them, is kids kind of just like, they kind of go for it. They might have questions, but they kind of go for it. But adults are very analytical when it comes to playing, to the point where they're like, oh, in the group classes, I've heard so many times, oh, I don't think I could ever memorize tunes, or oh, like, I won't be able to get off the sheet music, or oh, I don't think if they're a complete beginner, they're like, oh, I won't be able to play in 8 weeks. And I'm like, guys, it's okay. You will be playing tunes by the end of, the 8 weeks, right? Like, you might need the notes. Yes, you might need to practice a little bit more, but have that belief in yourself that you can do it. And it might, everybody's going to be starting at a different level. People progress at different, paces. But I think as long as you enjoy it, I think that's the most important thing. So that's what I try to bring to the lesson. And I kind of tailor my lessons to the individual. So, with some people I've done Ella Fitzgerald and Nat King Cole songs, or maybe not Disney movies, but Over the Garden Wall. We've done like the theme song from that, or we've done, like waltzes, or sometimes depending on when I go to these festivals. I went to the Belfast Trad Fest last year. And I had Kochaleen Nagawan. I was a masterclass assistant. There were some tunes there that like really suit some of my students' styles, so then I'll teach them those, So I really try to like tailor it to what the student wants. I'm open to suggestions. If they're like, Zohra, I don't want to do this, I'm like, okay, let's pivot. Like, let's think of something else, But yeah.
Right. That first point you made actually really resonated with me, because I think a lot of adults especially have that trepidation, to try something and then feel embarrassed about making mistakes or not playing things correctly. And a lot of the times it sounds like they're just being held back by their own belief and in not daring to try things. But really even the more professional musicians, when they perform on stage, they would say, well, I'll give it a go, or, we'll see how we get on. So, I think all of them are also just trying with a lot of preparation, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
Do you have any fun exercises that you do with your students?
Yeah, I don't know if my students would call it fun. I think they'd probably dread it because I can see the anticipation on their faces when I'm like, "Let's do this." But well, I'll kind of quiz on notes, which sounds like very rudimentary, but I always say with the concertina, if you don't know the notes, it's going to be very hard to actually learn tunes, right? Because trying to like learn tunes and with the concertina, because it's like in and out for what 30 different buttons, if you're trying to like fiddle around for the notes, the tune is going to take 10 times longer. So I will quiz for the notes. Now, I'll temper it, like I'm not going to spend 10 minutes on it. I also really like introducing different Irish musicians, just like talking about it, because I think that's one thing I reflected on when I started teaching was the fact that coming from outside of Ireland, there were some people, the way that we were taught it made me think that these people were born like 100 years ago and they were really just like 50 years ago, right? And they were still alive. So the connection between the tradition, which we kind of consider old, and some of the masters in tradition, which it's not that far back. I think that's something I struggled with, and maybe that's because I was a kid. So I was like, oh, yeah, okay, everybody's just old. But I think I really like discussing the tunes, the musicians with the students so that they can actually get a sense of the tradition outside of the concertina and just kind of like real life
Mhm.
discussion, if that makes sense. Because I feel like that's something I probably would have liked more context of as I was growing up. So,
Mhm. Right.
yeah.
And that's really helpful, I think, for, as you said, for people who are not coming from that background, or particularly if they're not Irish and they don't have that connection,
Mm-hmm.
to be able to know the history and feel a deeper connection with the instrument and the music. I did want to ask you, I think you got a new concertina last year. Was it
I got a new one probably 2 years ago at this
2 years
point.
ago? And
Three.
which one, which concertina do you have?
I got a Sutner. I teach on an Edgley, which is from Canada, Frank Edgley, but my main one now is a Sutner, so from Germany, and I love it. I decked it out in like all gold. I did gold foiled on the bellows. I did the gold tooling on like the leather part of it. I even asked for gold buttons, but Jurgen said no. So
Oh, it's like I
I'm
draw the line, but
Yeah, I'm not the only one. There was another musician I met who also asked, like, we met at Concertine, so the Concertina Festival in Ennis last year, I think. And somehow it came up in conversation, and both of us were like, yeah, we asked Jurgen for gold buttons. And what he told me is that it's too hard, like, it kind of wears, I guess the
mhm,
oils on your fingertips kind of, wear down the gold plating, I guess, or however he gets the gold on the buttons. So I was like, okay, fair enough. Like, I won't be that high maintenance for that one aspect. But yeah, I did customize it too. I have like two extra buttons, so I love it. I think I needed a new concertina for years, but they're quite expensive. So
they
yeah,
are.
but
They are. I've
investment.
seen
Yeah.
it, so it looks beautiful.
Thank you. Thank
Well, thanks so much for joining me again today, Zora. And for the audience, if you like this conversation, please like and subscribe. I'll see you next time. Thank you.